Welcome back, Night Wanderer. Tonight, you're slipping quietly into a chapter of history they definitely forgot to teach in school. By the way, if you were actually there, you'd probably have been arrested, eaten badly preserved fish, or caught something unpleasant. But don't worry. Tonight, you're only here in spirit. Before we set off, do that slow scroll to like and subscribe, but only if these sleepy little time loops are your thing. And tell me where in the world you're watching from, and what time your clock says. It's strangely comforting knowing who else is still up. Now, lights low, maybe grab a blanket, or let your ceiling fan hum away in the background. Time to drift gently back, one step at a time. The first thing you notice is the smell. Not a soft smell. Not the kind that eases into your nostrils with the delicacy of early morning dew or a whisper of lavender. No, this one is confident. Assertive. The kind of smell that makes decisions for you. The kind that kicks down the doors of your consciousness like a tax collector with a grudge. You're waking up in the year 1661, give or take. The mattress beneath you is straw, flattened from years of reluctant service, and stuffed into a ticking sack that might have once been white. It crackles and shifts like a bag of stale croutons every time you move. Something's crawling near your ankle. You decide not to look. The air is cold, not invigorating, not refreshing, but wet and bone-gnawing. Your blanket, singular, is wool. Scratchy, balding, vaguely goat-scented. It weighs on you like a damp argument, barely keeping the frost from colonizing your ribs. The walls around you are timber, loosely chinked with wattle and daub, which is a charming historical phrase for mud, dung, and prayer. Your room is small, humble. That's one word for it. Another would be miserable. The ceiling droops slightly, possibly from moisture, possibly from shame. A single candle stub rests on a warped wooden shelf, its wax melted into an irregular little monument of failure. The light outside filters in through warped shutters, gray, diffuse, indifferent. Morning has arrived, whether you wanted it to or not. You blink and try to sit up, your back popping like old knuckles. The ache in your shoulders reminds you, yes, you are once again you. A 17th century executioner. Not a king. Not a priest. Not a merchant. You're the guy people whisper about when they think you're not listening. You're the reason little children are told to behave. You're not the worst person in town, but you do get invited to the worst dinners. A rooster crows in the distance, sounding as if he too is deeply unhappy with his circumstances. Possibly hungover, possibly possessed. That's normal. Your boots are by the door, upright like judgmental old men. Your axe, the heavy one, leans beside them, its blade carefully wrapped in cloth. You sleep with it close, not because you're sentimental, but because you don't trust the locals not to accidentally lose it. You hear movement downstairs, likely the tanner's boy delivering another parcel of pig hide. Or possibly your cousin, Thomas, who rents the other half of your cottage and snores like a sack of bricks falling down a flight of stairs. You once considered moving to a quieter location. Then you remembered, you're a public servant. You can't afford dreams. The floor creaks under your weight as you swing your legs over the side of the mattress. The wood is cold. So cold, in fact, that your toes audibly protest. You feel every splintered ridge, every draft crawling between the floorboards like an apology from the past. You place your feet down anyway. Because really, what's the alternative? Staying horizontal until mold wins? You take a moment, just a moment to breathe. The smell of iron is faint but familiar. Not fresh blood, just residue. You've come to know the difference. It clings to your clothes, your hair, your fingernails, your soul, if that sort of thing exists and hasn't already packed up and left. There's a knock at the door, not a polite knock, a you're late and someone's head isn't going to remove itself kind of knock. You grunt, which is 17th century for, I'm coming, but I resent every aspect of this. You stand, joints stiff, bladder urgent. You shuffle toward the pitcher and basin in the corner, where you'll attempt something resembling washing before presenting yourself to the town. You look at your reflection in the water. It's wavy, distorted, kind perhaps in its dishonesty. Your beard is patchy, your eyes bloodshot, your teeth, well, fewer than last year. You splash water on your face. It's icy. You yelp quietly, like a ghost being startled. This is your life. This is your morning. You are an executioner, and the day has only just begun. You begin your morning ritual. as all executioners do, by negotiating with your own body. Your knees, for example, disagree with the concept of standing. They prefer bending, creaking, and occasionally threatening collapse like the hinges on an overused coffin. Your back, stiff from a combination of last night's cold, a lifetime of heavy lifting, and unresolved generational trauma, makes its opinions known with every vertebra. Your feet, sockless and frostbitten at the personality level, attempt to unionize the moment they touch the damp wooden planks of the floor. The chamber pot is full. Too full, in fact, and slightly warm, which is upsetting since you last used it nearly 6 hours ago. It squats under the bed like a shameful secret, half cloaked in shadow and bacteria. You promise to empty it soon. You won't. You say this every morning. You shuffle toward the basin again, dipping a rag into the freezing water, which bites your fingers like a vengeful ghost. You dab at your face, attempting to simulate cleanliness. It doesn't work. Your skin is grainy with soot and dried sweat, and there's something crusted in your beard that could either be gravy or a minor sin. You leave it. You're not in a romantic profession. There is a wooden comb on the shelf. You try to run it through your hair. It snaps in half. You try again. The comb declines the invitation. You pee outside because that's the most hygienic option. The outhouse is a 300-year-old wooden box infested with spiders and spiritual unease. You opt for the side yard. You are watched by a goat. The goat is named Thomas. Not after your cousin, Thomas was named first. You wonder briefly if the goat judges you. Then you remember that goats eat tin and scream at nothing. You stop worrying. Your breath fogs the air. You pull your shirt tighter, a linen thing with a questionable past. It has a tear across the shoulder that looks suspiciously like a blade nick. You tell people it's from a skirmish with a thief. It was from a skirmish with your own elbow. You once leaned too hard on your axe and forgot basic balance. Downstairs, the fire's gone out. You coax the coals back to life with dried twigs and newspaper scraps. Your hands are numb. Your breath sounds louder in the silence. There's something strangely intimate about watching fire begin again, like witnessing the rebirth of a minor god you accidentally killed the night before. Breakfast is not ready, because there's no one to make it but you. You open the cupboard. Inside, a few stale heels of bread, a jar of something green that might once have been pickled, and one despondent onion. You opt for bread. It cracks when you bite into it, like chewing on yesterday's gravestone. You eat anyway. Because in the 17th century, breakfast isn't a meal. It's a dare. You break your fast beside the fire, hunched on a stool that rocks slightly, but not rhythmically. Your cup of ale is slightly sour. It's also your water source. The river is full of things you can't unsee, and boiling is a luxury you forgot to budget time for. You take a sip and pretend it's a latte. Then you remember you don't know what that is, because you're trapped in the 1600s and caffeine comes from gnawing on raw beans or fainting. You stare into the fire. You have a moment to reflect. You think about your father. He was also an executioner. You think about his father, also in the family business. You think about how generational trauma is a bit more literal when your inheritance involves swinging an axe at people who owe taxes. You sigh deeply. It echoes slightly in the room. That might be your soul briefly escaping through your nose. Outside, the village is waking up. You hear carts rolling over cobblestones, chickens squawking in that panicked way that suggests fox-related trauma, and the distant bell from the priory. It tolls 6 times, which, to your great disappointment, means you are officially behind schedule. There's a knock at the door. It's not the same as yesterday's knock. That one was angry. This one is hesitant. You already know who it is. The mayor's clerk. Young, nervous, smells like chalk and civic anxiety. He always comes to remind you of the day's appointments, as if you could forget who's due to be hanged, pressed, or gently dismembered. You answer the door, half-dressed, and the clerk flinches. He always does. You wonder if he thinks you sleep in a coffin or a pile of skulls. You briefly consider telling him that you do, just to spice things up. But then you remember, sarcasm is a lost art in this era. You might end up exorcised. He hands you a folded parchment, eyes averted. You nod. He stammers a goodbye and flees, as if politeness were catching. You read the schedule: 1 beheading, 2 floggings, and a possible ear removal, which is always a little awkward. You're not sure why they put possible in quotes. Is the ear real? Is it metaphorical? You'll find out, eventually. The parchment smells like ink and fear. You return inside and begin preparing your tools. The axe must be honed. The rope must be checked. The saw, for emergencies only, must be located and not covered in jam again. You still don't know how that happened last month. You stretch your arms. You stretch your neck. You whisper a few prayers, not for the condemned, but for your lower back. You pack your bag. Whetstone, rag, flask, coins for bribing guards, spare gloves, a dried fig for lunch, and the kind of emotional detachment that takes years to cultivate. You glance in the warped tin mirror once more before heading out. You are not handsome. You are not admired. You are not even tolerated. But you are necessary. And so, with boots laced, blades slung, and dignity half-clothed, you step out into the morning fog, ready to face a town that fears you and a job that never ends. You live in a house. That's technically true. It has walls, if you're being generous, a roof, though it sags in the middle like a guilty conscience, and a door that closes if you apply the right angle, pressure, and silent prayer. In theory, it's protection from the outside world. In practice, it's a sponge made of timber, despair, and rat droppings. Let's start with the walls. They're wooden slats overlaid with plaster that's mostly intact if you don't count the holes, mold patches, or the occasional unsettling wet spot that seems to shift locations overnight. The interior smells like what happens when firewood gives up halfway through burning. The plaster is lime-based, alkaline, brittle, crumbly, and if you breathe too deeply, you're essentially doing artisanal asbestos shots. Don't worry, no one knew what asbestos was, or lungs. There's no insulation. That's a modern invention for people who expect to be warm in winter and not boil to death in summer. You, on the other hand, experience all 4 seasons simultaneously, from different corners of the same room. Drafts sneak in like gossip, curling around your ankles, slipping up your sleeves, occasionally poking you in places you'd rather not mention. The roof is thatch. The romantic kind, if you're writing a poem. The itchy, leaking, spider-filled kind if you're living under it. In the right season, which is most seasons, it develops a healthy crop of moss, black mold, and mystery damp. When it rains, the ceiling weeps. When it doesn't rain, the roof still weeps. You're not sure why. You think it might be haunted. You once found a bird's nest between the rafters. It contained both eggs and the skeletal remains of an older bird. You didn't ask questions. Now let's talk about the floor. It's wood. Splintery, warped, vaguely alive. Every board creaks, but not in a fun Disney haunted house way. More in a this might collapse mid-step sort of fashion. There are cracks wide enough to lose a spoon in. You've lost 2. Dust gathers in the corners like a conspiracy. Sometimes it moves. There are also the co-tenants. Let's begin with fleas. Fleas are not visitors in this house. They are residents. Generational. They know your bloodline better than you do. You wake up itching. You go to sleep scratching. You once counted over 40 bites on your calves alone. You gave up counting after that. The fleas bite you through your clothes. They bite you while you work. They bite you while you think about fleas. It's almost poetic. Then there are the lice. Not body lice. Those are for the fancy people with clean linen and powdered wigs. You have head lice and clothing lice, both of which have declared your scalp and armpits to be sacred ancestral homelands. You comb them out with a fine-toothed implement twice a week. They return, like regret. Rats? Naturally. Big ones, confident ones, the kind that look you in the eye and dare you to try something. You once found one on your pillow. It didn't run. It just stared. You left it alone. That was its pillow now. Mice also exist, but they're just rats who failed the entrance exam. You share your pantry with them, and the weevils, and the beetles, and something with a carapace you haven't had the courage to identify. Your flour is rarely white, more of a beige polka dot blend. You sift it, the bugs reappear. You call it self-repopulating protein. You eat anyway. Bathing? Well, you bathe once a week, or at least you aim to. Water is fetched from the public pump, which involves standing in line behind 10 people, 3 of whom are aggressively chatty and 2 of whom cough in a way that suggests plague, but make it festive. You carry the water back in a pail that leaks and groans like it resents being filled. You warm it over the hearth, a process that takes 3 hours, 4 curses, and a minor burn. Then you pour it into a wooden tub that smells like mildew, regret, and possibly a long-dead mushroom. You bathe quickly because the water cools rapidly and privacy is a myth. Also, you're sitting in your own dirt by minute 2. Soap is made of lye and pig fat. It burns a little. It smells like something that was once alive but isn't anymore, emotionally or chemically. It cleans the surface. It does nothing for your soul. Your towel is a rag. It doesn't absorb so much as redistribute. Your neighbors are no better. The tanner next door boils hides in a slurry of urine and lime, creating a smell that peels paint and confidence. The fishmonger lives 2 doors down. You can tell. Always. Even with the windows shut. Speaking of windows, you have one. Just one. It's made of horn. Not glass. You can't afford glass. Glass is for cathedrals and rich people's mirrors. Your window is a thin sheet of scraped animal horn, translucent like old fingernails, and roughly as appealing. Light comes through in pale, jaundiced streaks. It does not open, it does not close, it just is. Air circulation? Hilarious. You open the door when it gets too stifling. That just lets in more rats. You open the shutters when you need daylight. That lets in bugs. There is no winning, only compromise. The bed you sleep in is a pile of straw wrapped in burlap, layered with a woolen blanket that smells like wet goat and lost hope. Underneath, the frame groans with every movement. It was once a fine oak structure. Now it's mostly termites and prayers. You have no bathroom. You have a pot. You empty it out the window. So does everyone else. The alley below is a river of things best left undescribed. Sometimes it rains, and the smell rises like a spirit. You have learned to breathe shallowly. You have learned to appreciate the idea of comfort, even if the reality is a sour mattress, a stinking corridor, and lice that know your social security number. Still, you are lucky. You are indoors. You are dry. You are not currently being tortured by the Inquisition. And compared to many in your town, the widow who lives in a thatched lean-to by the pigsty, or the children sleeping in the bakery oven for warmth, you are practically royalty. So you ignore the fleas, slap away the lice, kick the rat out of your boot, and light the candle anyway. Because life goes on. Even when it smells like rotting onions and disappointment. You eat in the morning. Not because you're hungry, though you are, but because if you don't, your hands will shake during the day's work. And nothing says job insecurity like accidentally hitting someone's ear instead of their neck. So, you rise from your straw mat, avoiding the damp patch near the wall that may or may not be sentient by now, and shuffle toward what passes for a kitchen. Now, let's use the term kitchen loosely. It is not a room so much as a corner, not a table so much as a stained plank balanced on barrels. There's a small hearth, one blackened pot, and a spoon so warped by heat it resembles a question mark. Fitting really, since most of your breakfast starts with the question, what is that? Let's inventory. Your bread, and there's always bread, is stale. Not firm, not chewy. Stale. You could use it as a doorstop, a self-defense weapon, or a building material. It was baked 3 days ago in a communal oven down the street, the kind shared by a dozen other families, each of whom had the same attitude toward hygiene. What's that? It's dark bread. Not because it's whole grain or artisan, but because it's filled with flecks of bran, husks, and whatever else fell into the dough while the baker wasn't looking. Which, judging by the texture, included a pebble or two. Crunching is common. Crunching is fear. You slice it with a dull knife, which leaves you with something between a wedge and a gravel sample. You chew carefully, trying to avoid dental failure. Toothaches are common here, and dental care involves pliers, vodka, and prayer. You're not ready for that this week. Now, the spread. If you're lucky, there's lard. Salted, creamy pork fat lard, scraped from the bottom of a barrel. If it's too cold, it congeals into something that looks like aged candle wax and tastes like salt-flavored regret. If it's warm, it becomes slick, yellowish goo that separates into fat and slime like an overachieving vinaigrette. But you spread it anyway because it's fat, and fat equals energy, and energy equals not collapsing halfway through a beheading. On especially generous mornings, there might be an egg. 1. Boiled until the white is rubber and the yolk has the crumbly consistency of ancient sandstone. It peels in strips like sunburned skin. You don't mind. You've eaten worse. You've seen worse. If you're truly blessed, and today you are not, there might be cheese. Not fresh, soft cheese, mind you. Not creamy Camembert or smooth brie. No. This cheese has seen things. It's hard, sharp, and deeply suspicious. It smells like unwashed feet and moral compromise. You scrape off the mold, mostly. Then you eat it with reverence, like a communion wafer made of expired milk and rebellion. Occasionally there's pottage left over from the night before. A thick, beige sludge of lentils, barley, cabbage, and dreams deferred. It's reheated over low flame until it bubbles, not enthusiastically, but like it's considering reincarnation. You stir it with a stick. You eat it from a wooden bowl with a splintered rim that leaves splinters in your lip if you aren't careful. You're not careful. You bleed a little. There is no fruit. Not this season. The apples have all rotted or been hoarded. Berries are for summer. And oranges, please. What are you, the Duke of Artois? You do have ale. Weak, flat, tepid ale, served in a cracked cup that once had a handle, but now simply scalds your fingers when you hold it wrong. It tastes like someone whispered the idea of beer into dirty water. But it's safer than the water, which contains exactly 2 ingredients: liquid and cholera. Sometimes there's porridge. You think. It's more of a grain-based slurry. Sometimes oats, sometimes barley. Sometimes it's better not to ask. It has a consistency best described as moist regret and is only slightly improved by the addition of salt or lard. Once you tried adding honey, it attracted ants. You ate them anyway. Protein is protein. If you're sharing the meal, and you often are, you pass the bowl back and forth with your brother, or your wife, or your hired help. No one speaks much in the morning. The quiet is practical. Talking spreads droplets, and disease loves droplets. Conversation will come later, when the worst of the chewing is over and everyone's emotionally ready to accept that this meal was the best they'll have all day. There's also the issue of bugs. Not the ones crawling around your legs, those are standard. We're talking about the ones inside the food. Weevils in the flour, mites in the cheese. Sometimes maggots in the meat, if you're really lucky and the kitchen was too warm overnight. They squirm, you stir, you pretend they're spices. You eat anyway. Your dog sits near the hearth watching, waiting for a scrap. You drop a crust, he sniffs it, he walks away. Even he has standards, you don't. You finish the meal. You wipe your mouth with the back of your sleeve, which also serves as a napkin, towel, and emergency nosecloth. You stand, already aware that your stomach will start growling again in an hour, but knowing you won't get another bite until dusk. There's no brushing your teeth. There is no toothpaste. You chew a stick, if you remember. You rinse with ale. Your molars are on borrowed time. Still, you've eaten. You're alive. And now you have to go put on the work boots of a man who decapitates people for a living and hope that breakfast stays down. Your clothes are where fashion goes to die. They hang, and that's being generous, from the same wooden peg they've clung to for the last 4 years. Your tunic, if we're still calling it that, was once a muddy ochre, now faded into something between foggy despair and damp haystack. It smells like the inside of your boot and feels like someone wove it from regrets and burlap. Because they did. Mostly burlap. But you put it on anyway, because there are no drawers to open, no choices to make. You are not some lace-trimmed aristocrat idling in a Parisian salon, languidly debating between brocade and velvet. You're a public servant with a specialty in judicial homicide and absolutely no fashion budget. You dress in layers, not for style, but to outwit the cold, the damp, and the ever-lurking risk of contact dermatitis. The first layer, an undershirt of rough linen, patched so often it resembles a sad, haunted quilt. You slide it over your head, wincing as it snags on the scab from yesterday's splinter removal incident. The fabric rasps against your chest like sandpaper dipped in vinegar. Next comes the tunic, your outer layer. It's thicker, scratchier, and has elbow holes wide enough to qualify as decorative cutouts if you squint. You do not squint, you just sigh. Then, trousers. Or, to be honest, what's left of them? They're made of coarse wool, dyed a color that might have once resembled brown but now leans aggressively toward dung-smeared sadness. The knees are threadbare. The thighs are tight, but not in a flattering way. More in a "these seams will betray you mid-stride" kind of way. You do not wear undergarments. No one does. Underwear is for royalty. And masochists. You're already itchy enough without imprisoning your parts in an extra layer of scratchy linen. Besides, your profession requires easy movement. You've had to leap away from more than one client with surprisingly bad aim. Now for the shoes. Ah, yes, your beloved boots. Hand-me-downs from your predecessor, who left the job with 2 less fingers and a deep distrust of sharpened edges. The leather is cracked. The soles are separating from the rest of the shoe like a failed marriage. You stuff in bits of straw for insulation and hope the rats haven't claimed them during the night. One boot squeaks, the other slaps. Together, they announce your presence like a one-man pity parade. Socks? No. What are you, a viscount? You wrap your calves in puttees, strips of cloth wound around your legs for warmth, support, and to catch the mud before it swallows your trousers whole. They smell faintly of mildew and desperation, but at least they keep the fleas localized. Now, accessories. First, the belt, a wide, cracked thing with a buckle that requires 2 hands and a prayer to fasten. You tie on a leather pouch for coins, currently empty, a whetstone for your axe, never far, and a small cloth for wiping your hands post-performance, gracious if not hygienic. Next, your hood. This one's important, because people recognize you, and they don't like being reminded that death has a human resource department. The hood conceals your face just enough to avoid awkward small talk at the butcher's. Made of dark wool, it clings to your head like a wet sock and smells faintly of blood and stale onions. You wear it anyway. It's your brand. If you're especially busy today, say 3 executions and a hanging, you might wear your leather apron. It's thick, stiff, and deeply stained, not with paint. Let's not pretend. It's your working canvas. You scrub it every few weeks, but blood has a way of haunting fabric, especially when applied at speed. You check your axe, because of course you do. Your partner, your closest companion, a weighty thing with a double bevel blade, chipped along the edge, wrapped in cloth to keep it clean, meaning it only smells a little metallic and doesn't actively drip. You carry it over your shoulder like an oddly shaped violin case, only heavier, and with a more permanent impact on the audience. And now, finally, you assess yourself in the warped mirror hanging beside the door. Not because you're vain, but because you need to ensure there's no blood left over from yesterday's job. People talk. You don't need more rumors. You see a figure staring back, a little hunched, a little pale, hair like neglected thatch, hands like dried leather, eyes resigned but dressed. Mostly, and armed, and ready. You shove a crust of bread into your belt. You pull your hood low. You glance out the door, where the fog clings to the ground like guilt and the morning chill bites like a tax collector. Then you step outside. Another day, another poorly dressed descent into civic violence. Ah yes, the executioner's commute. It's not glamorous, it's not efficient, it's certainly not fast. You're not striding through cobbled streets with the swagger of a man on a mission. You're trudging through puddles, past pigs rooting through refuse, past people who absolutely saw you but are pretending very hard not to. You are a living reminder of mortality. No one wants eye contact with that before breakfast. You carry your axe slung across your back, tightly wrapped, both for dramatic flair and because letting it dangle would likely take off someone's ear in this crowd. Also, it's heavy, which is a problem, because so are your thoughts. You arrive at the square just after sunrise. Execution days draw crowds, not because they enjoy death. Well, not just because of that. It's a social event, a civic gathering. The 17th century version of live theater, but without the intermission or sanitation. There are merchants hawking cider, children climbing barrels for a better view, and someone inevitably selling meat pies that have never seen an actual butcher. You see the scaffold, freshly swept or not. There's still sawdust from the last performance, blood staining the planks in Rorschach shapes that no one dares to interpret. You don't mind. Blood dries. It's people's expectations that congeal. The guards are already there, armed and drowsy. They nod. You nod back. They don't ask how you are, you don't ask either. That kind of familiarity gets people weird when you're standing behind them with a sharpened edge. The condemned hasn't arrived yet. That gives you time. You take out your whetstone, sit at the edge of the platform, and sharpen. This is ritual. This is respect. This is terrifying the crowd just enough to keep them quiet. The rhythmic slide of stone against metal is oddly soothing. Scrape, pull, scrape, pull. It's not about sharpness, not really. A clean cut requires good aim, a steady hand, and a cooperative neck. But sharpening calms you, makes the moment feel less chaotic. Behind you, the carpenter adjusts the trapdoor for tomorrow's hanging. You nod to each other. Your colleagues, not friends. Friends would ask you how many this week. Colleagues just count the stains. Now your client. Dragged in with manacles, flanked by soldiers. Face pale, eyes wild, feet stumbling over their own regrets. You don't know the crime. You don't want to. Knowing invites sympathy. Sympathy invites hesitation. And hesitation, well, let's just say the crowd doesn't forget a botched beheading. Nor do they let you forget it. You give your speech, or someone does. Often the town crier. Sometimes a priest. They say words about justice, about sin, about consequences. No one listens. They're watching your hands, watching your acts, waiting for the moment. You take position. You make eye contact. Or you don't, depending on your mood. Some like to whisper last words, some scream, some collapse. You've seen it all. Your hands are steady, your feet are planted, and you swing. It's over in a second. If you've done it right, you usually do. The crowd reacts, a gasp, a cheer, a vomit. You don't react. You wipe the blade, you walk away. There's no applause, just a faint silence that follows you home like an unwanted dog. You return the axe to its cloth wrapping. You collect your pay, not much. A few coins, maybe a bit of meat. Sometimes a promise of firewood that never arrives. You're not in it for the money. You're in it because someone has to be. Because once you start, no one else will. You stop by the tanner's. He nods. You leave the bloodied apron for cleaning. He charges extra. You don't argue. He knows you need him more than he needs you. On your way home, someone spits near your feet. Not at you, not exactly. Just in your general direction. You're used to it. Some cross themselves. Some whisper behind their hands. One child runs up to ask how many heads you've taken. His mother drags him away like you're a bear that might snap. You are not welcome in church. Not really. You stand at the back, or not at all. You have your own gods now, ones with no names and no temples. Just silence and routine. Sometimes they dream of the heads you've taken. Sometimes you do too. And then, as if by divine comedy, a wedding is scheduled for the afternoon. Yes. Because who doesn't want to be married within sniffing distance of a blood-soaked scaffold? You're expected to clean up, not the execution site, heavens no. Yourself. You rinse your hands in a barrel of cold water. You scrape your boots. You try to smile at the couple as they pass. They do not smile back. You are necessary. But you are not wanted. And that's the job. You finish the day by sharpening again. Not because you need to, but because the scrape of metal on stone is the only sound that doesn't lie. Your shoulders ache, your hands are stiff, but your blade gleams in the fading light like a grim moon that only rises when justice sleeps. You've done your duty, you've done your damage, and tomorrow you'll do it again. If you feel unwell today, and let's face it, you probably do, your options are limited. You wake with a pounding in your temples, a sourness in your stomach, and a boil forming on your inner thigh that throbs with a pulse all its own. It's not fatal yet, but you have your suspicions. After all, most things in this era are fatal eventually. Sometimes even blinking wrong can send someone to an early grave. Still, you're not dead yet, just uncomfortable, which, in the 17th century, is a baseline state of being. You think about ignoring it. The body is allegedly built for suffering, and besides, you've worked through worse. That festering gash from the poorly timed axe recoil. The infected splinter that blossomed into a swollen sausage finger. That one time you sneezed and threw your back out for 3 weeks. But this feels different. So you make the dreaded decision. You visit the barber surgeon. Let's get this straight. He is not a doctor in the modern sense. He has no formal training. He probably can't read. He owns a razor, a jar of leeches, and a collection of stains that would cause modern OSHA agents to cry. He greets you in his shop, which smells like iron, wet wool, and denial. On one side, a cracked mirror. On the other, a wooden chair with rope armrests in case you squirm. The floor is littered with bits of old hair, old blood, and what may have once been someone's toe. He squints at your boil, nods sagely, says something about humors, those mysterious bodily fluids that determine your health, your mood, and possibly your credit score. You are clearly out of balance, too much black bile probably, or not enough phlegm. Either way, the solution is the same. Bloodletting. Of course it is. He opens a little wooden box lined with rusty blades and odd smells. Picks out the one that looks cleanish. You try not to look. He assures you it won't hurt much. He lies. He always lies. He slices your forearm, not too deep, just enough for a small trickle, and lets your blood drip into a cracked ceramic bowl. He watches it with the reverence of a man observing a sacred rite. You watch it with the quiet horror of someone slowly realizing they're paying to bleed. After a few minutes, he stops. Not because your humors are balanced, but because he's bored. He dabs your arm with a rag stiff from previous patients, wraps it in a bandage that was once white but now leans aggressively toward beige, and gives you a ginger candy as a reward. You're lightheaded, you smell faintly of copper, and your boil is still very much attached. So he offers a backup plan: herbal poultice. Ah yes, the ancient and noble tradition of smearing mashed plants on open wounds. He takes something green, something crumbly, and something that might be cat hair, mixes it into a paste with lard, and slathers it generously over the afflicted area. It burns. That means it's working, he says. You're not so sure. Then, to really cover all mystical bases, he ties a toad amulet to your belt and mutters a Latin phrase he absolutely made up. You leave lighter, both in blood and dignity. Still, it could have been worse. He could have gone for trepanation. You've seen it done. The boring of a hole into the skull to release evil vapors or bad spirits. Sometimes, shockingly, the patient survives. Sometimes they wake up improved. Other times they wake up dead. It's hard to say. Then there's the urine diagnosis. Don't even get started. You once saw him diagnose someone's future based solely on the smell of their pee. He said it had notes of melancholy and rain. The patient died 4 days later, though unrelated. Probably. Let's not forget the other miracle cures. Goose fat poultices for gout, mouse paste for toothaches, powdered mummy, yes, actual ground-up corpses for vitality, dead man's hand to treat skin ailments, gently rub across the affected area, presumably while screaming inside. You once saw a man with a broken leg treated by having it rebroken, then set with wooden planks and wine-soaked linen. The wine was for infection control. The linen was reused. Infection still won. And of course, leeches. You cannot escape the leeches. Kept in a jar, hungry, squirming. Slapped onto forearms, ankles, temples. You're told they know when to stop. They don't. You usually stop them by passing out. But medicine isn't just about the body. It's about beliefs. And if someone's ill long enough, people start whispering. Maybe it's not bad air. Maybe it's witchcraft. And once that accusation is out there, good luck. No amount of leeches will save you. You've seen women dragged away in the night, accused of causing nosebleeds and spoiled butter. Their only crime? Living too long near a goat with a limp. Still, you survive today. You wrap your bandaged arm, you walk home slower. You pass a neighbor coughing so violently his soul tries to escape through his teeth. No one checks on him. They all assume it's just the ague or maybe divine punishment. You make it back. You lie down. Your head spins, but at least your humors are balanced. And your boil? Still there. Now angrier. But that's okay, because in this century, getting sick isn't a matter of if. It's a matter of how many leeches it'll take before you regret trying. Congratulations. You've survived until dinner, an achievement not to be underestimated. Between the bloodletting, the mounting infection, and the psychic toll of existing in this particular century, many don't make it past noon. But you're here, alive-ish, hungry-ish, and now it's time for your second culinary punishment of the day. Let's be generous and call it supper. It sounds quaint, almost hopeful. But don't let the word fool you. This is not the kind of supper sung about in medieval ballads. There is no roast pheasant, no honey-glazed parsnips, no busty innkeeper pouring you ale from a frothy tankard while a lute strums softly in the corner. There is gruel. More specifically, a tepid bowl of barley and cabbage death mash, half submerged in its own grayish water. The cabbage, boiled into submission, no longer has a shape. The barley is less a grain and more a mood. Soggy, bland, and existentially tired. It smells faintly of boiled sock. You eat anyway, because in the 17th century, food doesn't nourish. It tests you. You lift your spoon, carved from the same wood as your neighbor's coffin probably, and scoop up a wobbly mouthful. It steams faintly like an old man sighing. You blow on it. The steam smells like compost and defeat. And then, the first bite. Soft. So soft. Offensively soft. As if all texture had been banned by royal decree. There is salt somewhere in theory, but it's been hoarded by the wealthy for preserving meats you'll never see. Your tongue searches for flavor like a miner groping through rock. It finds cabbage, a memory of cabbage, a ghost of cabbage passed on in a tragic stew accident. You chew, you swallow, you live, barely. Tonight there's something special, a small slab of salt pork, which sounds promising until you realize it's 87% fat, 12% salt, and 1% pork-adjacent gristle. It's been hanging from a rafter for weeks, lovingly massaged with salt until it resembles something between a brick and a preserved scream. You cut it with a knife that may or may not have last been used to scrape mud off a boot. The pork resists. It has the consistency of old leather and the mouthfeel of salted remorse. But you chew it, because protein is rare and your jaw needs the exercise. To wash it down? Small beer. Not beer as we know it. This is weak, cloudy, room-temperature barley juice with all the glamour of pond water. Children drink it. Pregnant women drink it. You drink it. Because the water will kill you. The beer might just stun you gently. There is no dessert. If you're lucky, you might gnaw on a piece of black bread, so dense it has its own gravitational field. It was baked 3 days ago, left to harden on a shelf, and now serves as both sustenance and a viable self-defense weapon. Still hungry? There's always pottage, a forever simmering stew, reheated daily, never fully consumed. A witch's cauldron of ingredients both known and guessed. You don't ask what's in it. No one does. It changes. Some days it's lentils, other days it's turnip, marrowbone, or something that ran through the barn too slowly. You eat it anyway. You ask no questions, because food is a gift, not a pleasure. Not when storage means suspending meat in a cloth bag over the hearth. Not when preservation means salt, smoke, or burying it in the ground and hoping rats don't file a claim. Not when famine is always in the background, lurking like a gossiping neighbor with a knife. You've heard stories. Whole towns wiped out when the rains didn't come. Families surviving on boiled tree bark. Children trading pebbles for the smell of bacon. You once met a man who proudly ate nothing but moss for an entire winter. His teeth turned green. He still insists it was an aesthetic choice. And let's not forget the bread riots. When grain prices soar, and they always do, people revolt. Not for politics, not for ideology. For bread. For the right to bite into something that won't shatter a molar. You once saw a man stabbed over a bag of millet. He bled into the flour. They still used it, baked it into biscuits for the magistrate's dogs. You scrape the last bits from your bowl. They cling stubbornly. You chase them with your spoon like a dog chasing its own tail. Eventually, you give up. You lick the spoon. You don't care who sees, because your stomach is no longer full, just tired of complaining. You sit back. Let the meager warmth of digestion lull you, and briefly, you allow yourself to imagine a better world. One with garlic, with seasoning, with refrigeration, with Instagram reels of avocado toast posted by people who've never heard of trenchfoot or salted rat jerky. You imagine chewing something crunchy, and weep. But not for long, because supper is over, and there's no time for emotion when your digestive tract is locked in a medieval brawl with cabbage sludge. You wipe your mouth with a corner of your sleeve, you belch, it tastes like boiled disappointment. And just like that, dinner is done. Let's begin with a confession. Not yours, though you'll be giving plenty of those. No, this confession belongs to the world around you. The village, the town, the entire 17th century mindscape. It's whispering, always. Not in facts or data or rational inquiry, but in dreams, omens, and vaguely threatening folklore passed down by people who believed comets were angry gods with dandruff. This is not a world where you know things. This is a world where you believe them. With just enough fear to ensure the stakes remain eternal. Tonight, the moon is full, which, in your mind and in the minds of everyone you know, means trouble. The cows might miscarry, the bread might rise badly, someone might turn into a werewolf. Again, you say a prayer. You don't know if it works, but saying it is better than not, just in case. There are no atheists in a world without antibiotics. Religion and its spooky cousin superstition aren't hobbies here. They're oxygen. You inhale God with every breath. Exhale fear. It's baked into your schedule, stitched into your clothing, and muttered before you sneeze. If you don't cross yourself after passing the gallows, you risk inviting the dead into your shoes. You go to church every Sunday. You must. Not going is as suspicious as showing up naked and humming. It's not just a spiritual event, it's a surveillance meeting. The entire village is there, judging, watching, noting who yawns, who nods off, who smells faintly of sin. The priest doesn't just give sermons, he takes mental attendance for the Inquisition's future convenience. You kneel, you stand, you chant in Latin, you don't speak Latin, no one does. But the rhythm is comforting, like muttering to ward off a curse, which, incidentally, you also do. In your home hangs a bundle of dried herbs, placed there to repel witches. The herbs are ineffective, the belief is not. You sleep with a blessed medallion under your pillow. You've never seen it work, but last time you misplaced it, your cousin caught fire. Correlation is all the proof you need. Your neighbor believes her goat is cursed. It stopped giving milk after she insulted a wandering peddler with one eye and suspiciously many teeth. Clearly, the peddler was a witch, or a demon, or a Frenchman, all equally suspicious categories. The goat, for its part, seems fine, but now wears a small crucifix around its neck. The priest blessed it personally. No one asked the goat's opinion. You believe in witches. Of course you do. How else to explain a good harvest on your neighbor's land and rot on yours? Coincidence? Meteorology? Please. The world runs on moral balance sheets, and someone else is cheating. Accusations fly like midges in spring. A wart is suspicious. A third nipple is very suspicious. A woman who reads is basically Satan's pen pal. You know this because your aunt once healed a fever with a tea made of moss and boiled owl foot, and now she's chained to a post awaiting trial by dunking. Trial by dunking, where logic goes to drown. They tie you up, toss you in the river, and see what happens. If you float, you're a witch, obviously buoyed by the devil's air pockets. If you sink, you're innocent, but also now dead. It's a win-win for justice. Speaking of justice, confession is the only legal advice you'll ever get. You confess to things you didn't do, just to stop the questions. You confess to things you might have done, just to get some sleep. You confess to being in league with demons you've never met, because saying otherwise gets you flogged harder. Your dreams are not safe either. Dreams are where the devil speaks. If you sleep too soundly, it's because you've made a pact. If you scream in your sleep, it's because something is inside you. If you dream of dancing, well, you're practically halfway to heresy. You once told your mother about a dream where a bird spoke to you. She slapped you with a Bible, just in case. There are blessings for everything. For livestock, for childbirth, for sword maintenance, for suspicious rashes. There are also curses for everything. You can curse someone's cow to limp, their wife to miscarry, their soup to taste of ash and betrayal. Some people do this recreationally. You whisper a few yourself, quietly into your bread. Bread doesn't judge, but the community does. There is no privacy. Your walls are thin, your habits are noted. If you wake too early, you're plotting. If you sleep too late, you're lazy. If you hum a secular tune while chopping onions, someone somewhere will accuse you of dancing with the devil. The devil, for his part, probably has better taste in music. Even animals aren't immune. A cat meows at the wrong time, which is familiar. A dog howls at dusk, portent of death. A rooster crows at midnight, you're already haunted. Sometimes you wonder how much of it is real, how much is fear, how much is just a way to explain the unexplainable, the rot, the famine, the sadness. But you don't ask, because asking is dangerous. Asking gets you noticed. And in this world, being noticed is the first step to getting burned. You say your nightly prayers. Cross yourself twice, because you coughed weird earlier. Tuck your blessed medallion under your chin. Avoid looking out the window, just in case a demon is watching, waiting for eye contact. You lie still. Let the candle flicker. Let the ancient whispers in your bones keep you still. You believe, because not believing isn't just risky, it's illegal. So what does an executioner do for fun? If you said, go bowling, congratulations. You're wrong, but adorably optimistic. There are no bowling alleys here. There are no alleys. Just mud trails, shame, and the occasional drunk goat lying suspiciously still. Fun in your world is relative. For you, the man who decapitates neighbors and occasionally disembowels thieves for ceremonial effect, fun is not so much experienced as tolerated. You are not invited to tavern sing-alongs. No one knits you socks. If you're lucky, they let you sit near the fire, provided you don't talk, breathe too loud, or make eye contact with their children. Let's start with public punishments. You don't just work them, you attend them. So does everyone else. It's a social event, like a birthday party, but with more screaming and fewer cakes. People gather in the square, crowding around wooden scaffolds like pigeons around spilled grain. They bring snacks. They bring their children. Some wear festive ribbons. No one seems particularly disturbed. Because this is what you do on a Saturday. You, naturally, are front and center. You're not exactly the life of the party, more like the mildly horrifying mascot. Everyone knows you. No one greets you. If someone nods at you in public, they'll probably be questioned by the church by nightfall. Today's fun? A pillory session. A man who stole a wheel of cheese is locked into a wooden stock, arms out, head forward, mouth gagged only by his own shame and a slightly too large mustache. He will remain here for 6 hours. During this time, the townsfolk will throw vegetables at him, rotten ones, ideally, call his wife unprintable names, argue about whether the cheese was really worth it, bet on whether he'll faint, vomit, or urinate first. His crime? Hunger. His punishment? Public theater. You stand by the scaffold, axe casually resting on your shoulder. You're not scheduled to swing it today, but the presence is a reminder. Things escalate quickly. After the pillory, it's time for a more interactive event. Bear baiting. Yes, this is entertainment. A bear, muzzled, barely fed, and deeply confused, is chained in a pit while dogs are unleashed upon it for the amusement of the crowd. Children cheer. Men gamble. Someone drops a pie and doesn't pick it up. You watch, trying not to wonder whether the bear deserves a better lawyer. There's a puppet show nearby. The puppets are vaguely shaped like nobles, priests, or devils. It's satire, technically, a kind of comedy. The jokes are bawdy, the movements are jerky. One of the puppets has a removable head. You suspect that's supposed to be funny. You don't laugh. Someone notices you. They quiet immediately. The laughter dips. The puppeteer's voice falters. Your presence, even off-duty, sucks the joy from a room faster than spoiled ale. So you wander toward the tavern. Now, tavern might suggest a lively, candlelit place with wooden mugs and merry song. But here, it's a one-room building with dirt floors, beer that tastes like tears, and a smell that can best be described as smoked despair. You sit, you drink. The ale is tepid. The bread is damp. The pickled egg was probably pickled by accident. A man in the corner is telling a joke about a pig, a nun, and a cheese wheel, but stops when he sees your face. You are not welcome, but you are tolerated. Until the law gets involved. Because, of course, something always happens. A man has accused his neighbor of stealing a sheep. There is no evidence, just shouting. The local constable, a man with more opinions than teeth, declares that the accused must undergo a trial by hot iron. That is exactly what it sounds like. A glowing metal rod is pressed to the accused's hand. If it heals cleanly in 3 days, he is innocent. If not, he is guilty. This is how science works now. You nod solemnly, mostly to hide the fact that your brain is trying to claw its way out of your skull. You remember a time, long ago, when justice might have involved reason, debate, maybe even paperwork. Here, it's all about showmanship. A hanging is as much performance as it is punishment. You're expected to deliver it cleanly, quickly, but not too quickly. People want a little squirm, a little drama. They need to feel like their taxes are doing something meaningful. And occasionally, if you botch the job, if the knot slips or the neck refuses to crack, the crowd boos. Booing a man for not killing fast enough. That's your Yelp review now. At festivals, and yes, there are festivals, entertainment includes Morris dancing, where men with bells on their ankles flail like enchanted geese, fortune-telling by a woman who has seen exactly 0 futures but all of your secrets. Drunken pig chases where catching a greased hog earns you bragging rights and a rash, and sometimes there's music. A man plays a lute with 3 strings. It's out of tune. No one notices. You sit by the fire pretending to enjoy it, pretending that this is normal. That you're not haunted by the face of the boy you executed last week for stealing buttons. That your hands don't still feel the weight of his shoulders. That his mother's scream doesn't echo between your ears every time the wind goes quiet. You sip your beer. It tastes like someone cried into vinegar and added a hint of mushroom. You listen to the laughter. You watch the joy. So small, so forced, so desperate. And you wonder what it's like to be one of them. One of the watchers, not the watched. But you're the man with the axe, and the man with the axe doesn't get to dance. Let's begin with a question you may be asking yourself. As an executioner, a man who removes heads for a living, do you date? Technically, yes. Emotionally, Less so. Romance in the 17th century is less about butterflies and more about livestock, literally, because in many cases marriage negotiations involve pigs, goats, or a particularly robust cow. Love, in this time, is measured in hooves. You with your axe and your charming smile, read terrifying frown, are not the first man young women dream of marrying. You're more like the consolation prize of doom. Their father made a bad deal. The cow had one leg, the dowry was cursed. The girl is crying. You show up. Let's rewind a bit. Imagine for a moment you're not you. You're a young woman in a nearby village. You're 14. That's considered prime marrying age because the concept of consent hasn't been invented yet, and the average life expectancy suggests you've got 2 pregnancies and a funeral coming up before 30. Your father arranges a match, not based on charm or kindness or mutual hobbies, but based on how many chickens your future husband's family can provide. You get 3 chickens and a pair of socks. He gets you. Forever. Now back to you, the executioner. Because of your role, you are technically useful to the state, which means you are granted permission to marry. But good luck finding someone who voluntarily wants to marry the town's most feared man. Dating apps do not exist. If they did, your profile would read, profession, public executioner. Hobbies, sharpening blades, brooding in corners, not being invited to dinner. Fun fact, you know how everyone dies. Unsurprisingly, the swipe rate would be low. Most executioners marry in one of 3 ways. They marry widows, often those whose previous husbands died under mysterious, or ironically professional, circumstances. They marry other outcasts, people accused of witchcraft, thievery, or general bad vibes. They pay for it, not with money necessarily, but favors. Protection. Silence. Your own partner, let's call her Ilsa, did not exactly swoon when you courted her. Your courtship consisted of an awkward loaf of bread, a comment about her strong arms meant as a compliment failed spectacularly, and a moment where you promised not to execute anyone she liked, romantic, really. Still, you wed. The ceremony is brief. The priest avoids eye contact. Half the village attends, out of morbid curiosity, not joy. Children whisper about the possibility that your wedding wine is laced with blood. You smile because it probably is. And then, the wedding night. Let's skip most of it for your own comfort. But know this, beds are not private. They creak, loudly. The walls are thin, and your in-laws are usually sleeping 10 feet away, pretending to be unconscious while giggling into their straw pillows. Privacy, in this era, is a myth. Romance, if it exists at all, is practical. You and your spouse speak in chores. You exchange affection through quiet grunts, shared bread crusts, and not murdering each other when tensions run high. She mends your socks. You try not to frighten her when you come home covered in blood. You once brought her a flower. It was wilted, half eaten by a beetle. She pressed it in a book anyway. And that, in this world, is love. Now let's peek at dating customs for the general population. Flirting often involves the following. Throwing fruit affectionately, braiding hair while lice jump ship like sailors in a storm, whispering sweet nothings, such as, your father says your dowry includes a goose. Kissing before marriage, scandalous. Holding hands in public, risque. Premarital intimacy? Well, that depends. If you're wealthy, it's hushed and overlooked. If you're poor, it's punished, sometimes with shaming rituals, like walking through the town in rags while holding a sign that says fornicator. That really happened in multiple regions. Infidelity, too, is a public affair. If a man cheats, the town gossips. If a woman cheats, she's beaten, imprisoned, or has her head shaved. Equality? Not even remotely. The scales are so tilted, they might as well be decorative. Sometimes, if a husband suspects his wife of infidelity, he will hire a midwife to examine her. This is not science, this is trauma. The midwife checks for looseness, a term with all the credibility of a wet shoe. Let's move into the emotional sphere. Do people love each other? Yes, sort of. People find connection where they can, often quietly, often dangerously. There are secret letters, passed under doors, late-night conversations, whispered by candlelight, soft touches exchanged when no one is looking. Love, in this time, is not cinematic. It's survival. 2 people trying to find warmth in a world that keeps blowing the windows open. 2 people sharing a blanket, not because it's romantic, but because otherwise one of them will die of frostbite. And still, amid the grime, the fear, the overwhelming stink of pickled herring, love blooms. You once watched a man steal an apple for a woman he fancied. He was caught. You were ordered to whip him. You did it. Lightly. That was your gift to their courtship. Maybe they're still together. Maybe they named a child after you. Maybe not the first name, but maybe a middle name, a quiet one. Unspoken but remembered. You never ask. You don't get involved. You have enough ghosts already. Back at home, your spouse is waiting. She has made soup. It is mostly water and turnip. You eat anyway. Because in the 17th century, that food doesn't nourish. It apologizes. You look at her, hair tied back, hands rough from mending leather, eyes tired but sharp, and think, this is not love as you imagined it, but it's the best this century can offer. And tonight, it's enough. There is a child sleeping in the corner of your home. You think it's your child. Possibly. It might also be a neighbor's or a cousin's or a child who wandered in and simply hasn't left. You don't ask questions because, in the 17th century, parenthood is not a science, it's a social shrug. Children are, technically, people, but only just. Their value depends on what they can carry, lift, scrub, or endure. Childhood, as you understand it in the 21st century, giggles, bedtime stories, long afternoons of chasing butterflies and questioning the cosmos, simply does not exist here. The cosmos has no time for them. The cosmos is full of lice. When a child is born, there is little ceremony unless the family is wealthy. Midwives are summoned, women with experience, herbal knowledge, and zero access to soap. The birthing room is humid, frantic, full of moaning and prayer. The child emerges into the world screaming, and if they're lucky, they'll continue screaming for several more years. If they're not, well, that's why the cradle is made from repurposed coffin wood. Infant mortality is so high that people rarely bother naming the child right away. It's common to wait a few weeks. Why get attached when there's a decent chance they'll be carried off by a fever, a hungry rat, or a passing curse? But let's say the child survives. By age 3, they are expected to help around the house, stir the pot, tend the fire, watch the goats. If they cry, they're soft. If they fall into the latrine, they're clumsy. If they ask questions, they're possessed. By age 6, they can carry water, feed chickens, swat at the ever-present flies with a stick like some biblical tennis match. If they're lucky, they're apprenticed. If they're unlucky, they become your helper, which means watching heads roll and pretending it's not traumatizing. You once had a boy, little Tam, short for Tamsin, though his parents insisted it was short for Tamworthy, a name I can assure you no one else has ever borne. Tam came to you as an apprentice after his father, a chimney sweep, died of excessive soot inhalation. That's not a joke. That was an actual cause of death. Tam's job was simple. Carry your axe, sweep up bones, and avoid eye contact with the condemned. He was 7. He hummed as he worked, all day. Off-key, nasal little tunes about birds and soup. It was haunting. And, oddly, soothing. Children in this time are not only laborers, they're currency. If your family is too poor, you may be sold to another household. If your family is slightly better off, you might be married off to a middle-aged man who owns a goose. Little girls, their job is survival in silence. They learn to cook, sew, keep house, and avoid doing anything that might make them the subject of village gossip, which, in the 17th century, includes such heinous acts as reading, bleeding too long during a period, or owning a cat. Education? The rich get Latin, the poor get lashed. If you're lucky enough to be taught your letters, you'll probably learn from a Bible, a wooden horn book, or an older sibling who can barely spell bread. Arithmetic is reserved for those dealing with money. Everyone else? You count by eggs, goats, and bruises. Fun fact, toys exist. They are wooden, pointy, and mostly designed to injure. The most popular options include a stick, a smaller stick, a rock painted to look like a dog, a doll made from rags, straw, and the tears of disappointment. Actual quote from a 17th century parenting guide: "Spare the rod, spoil the child." Corporal punishment isn't just accepted, it's encouraged. If your child doesn't flinch when you raise your hand, you're considered too lenient. Do children ever play? Yes, in the margins of suffering. They invent games, as children do, elaborate fantasies, often involving death, royalty, or pretending to be pigs. Pigs, after all, have more freedom. They chase each other barefoot across cobblestones, splash in disease-riddled puddles, and create elaborate plots about running away to sea. You remember that feeling? The tug of escape. the illusion that the world might be softer somewhere else. It isn't. But they don't know that yet. Children's health is precarious at best. They cough constantly. They have rashes, boils, mysterious infections. Their teeth rot before they've fully grown in. If they cut themselves, it festers. If they get a fever, they're bled. If they survive smallpox, they bear its marks forever, cratered cheeks and haunted eyes. Sometimes you execute people younger than you think possible. There's one you try not to remember. A boy of maybe 12, sentenced for stealing bread. The judge said he was too old to be ignorant. As if hunger could be cured by discipline. You made it quick. You always do. But it didn't feel like justice. It felt like a betrayal of breath. And what of your own children? If you have any, they live with the knowledge that their father is both feared and needed. They are avoided in the schoolyard. They are not invited to play. One of them, a daughter with clever eyes, once asked if she could change her name. You let her. She chose Else. Short. Simple. No blood on it. At night, the children huddle close, not for comfort but for warmth. There are no soft blankets, only layered rags and proximity. You tell them stories, not fairy tales, but factual nightmares. How the Danes boiled thieves in oil, how plague doctors wore masks with beaks full of herbs, how witches float. They listen, eyes wide, absorbing horror the way children always have, with awe. Because in the 17th century, horror isn't terrifying, it's normal. And you are both monster and guardian. As the fire dies and the lice begin their nightly waltz, you look at your children, tiny adults shaped by hardship, and wonder, what will they become? Executioners? Wives? Folk songs? You hope, if nothing else, they live long enough to be tired. That, in this era, is a form of success. There's a scratching noise in the thatch. You don't bother investigating. You already know it's rats. Or maybe weasels. Possibly a cat if you're lucky, though the odds of luck and cats aligning in this era are slim at best. More likely, it's something with teeth and a fondness for soft human bits. That's not a metaphor. It's just how life works. Here in your 17th century home, the animals are always nearby. And always watching. Start with the dogs. Not fluffy companions with Instagram accounts and birthday hats. No, these are functional canines, bred for hunting, guarding, or barking at spirits. They are lean, ragged, and mildly haunted. Some are missing eyes. Others seem to have extra ones. All of them smell like burnt soup and meat left in the sun. Your dog, you've named him Muck appropriately, sleeps by the door, not out of loyalty, but because that's where the kitchen scraps are flung. His tail is half a stick. He once bit a tax collector. You gave him extra gruel that night. Then there are the cats. Now, cats walk a delicate line. On one hand, they're revered for their ability to keep rats away from grain. On the other, they're suspected of witchcraft, paganism, and general sass. One poorly timed meow during a thunderstorm, and your cat might be blamed for blighting the neighbor's turnips. Still, you keep one, or rather, it keeps you. A soot-black shadow named Twitch, who stares too long and knocks over things with purpose. You once tried to pet it. The scars are still visible, but perhaps the true rulers of your home are the fleas. Endless, tiny, relentless. They ride in on rats, on pigs, on your own unwashed trousers. You scratch idly as you listen to the fire crackle. Everyone scratches. It's like a choreographed folk dance of agony. Children scratch. Dogs scratch. The priest scratches during sermons. And lice? Oh, lice are family. You've named some. Harold lives in your eyebrow. Clarice in your left armpit. You tried vinegar once. The lice just laughed. Let's not forget the pigs. In smaller homes, which is to say, most homes, livestock often live inside with the family. For warmth, for protection. For practical reasons that stop feeling practical the moment you step in pig dung at 3 a.m. Pigs are intelligent. They know your routines. They know your moods. They sometimes know when someone's about to die. You'd think this would be unsettling. It is. But you grow used to it, like you grow used to leaking roofs and existential dread. You once saw a goat climb a staircase and refused to come down. It lived upstairs for 6 weeks. The family adapted. They started calling it Uncle. Chickens, too, roam freely, pecking at crumbs and occasionally children. One hen in particular, Matilda, has taken a liking to your boots. She sleeps on them, lays eggs in them, attacks anyone who comes too close, including you. You've accepted your role as second tier in your own home. Now, let's visit the less charming members of the animal kingdom. Rats. Large, brazen, sometimes educated. They steal food, yes, but also soap, candles, lace, and in one case, your dignity. You once woke up with one perched on your chest, staring at you like it had questions. You blinked first. Flies, their background noise, eternal, endless, buzzing, swarming, dying in your drink, and daring you to fish them out and pretend it's flavor. Worms in bread, beetles in flour, maggots in meat. You pick them out without ceremony. Protein is protein. Complaining is for the rich. Now, you might be wondering, were animals loved? Oh, absolutely. But not the way you love your labradoodle. More like how you love a coal shovel. It helps, it breaks, you patch it, and when it dies, you cry for 5 minutes, then eat it, depending on the species. There are exceptions, of course. A widow down the lane swears her donkey saved her from drowning. A soldier once gifted his war horse a velvet ribbon. And children, oh, children, they adore their creatures. Whether it's a limping ferret, a pet duck named Trouble, or a flea circus drawn on the back of a spoon, they form bonds. But most of the time, animals are utility first, affection second, and hygiene non-existent. You, as the village executioner, have a strange relationship with animals. Dogs growl at you instinctively. Cats blink slowly, sensing the ghosts you drag behind you. Birds go silent when you pass, a phenomenon you've never tested but have noticed. Even the cows seem skeptical. You once tried to keep a songbird, a gift from a man you pardoned. It sang so sweetly you wept. Then it died of smoke inhalation because you forgot birds don't thrive next to open hearths and boiling lye. You buried it under a rock and carved its name, Mercy. In the evenings, when the fire is low and the shadows grow bold, the household becomes a zoo. Bats flutter overhead. A fox might peek through a broken shutter. Something skitters across your ceiling beam, too heavy for a mouse, too fast for a squirrel. You decide not to investigate. That's the rule here. Don't investigate. Just coexist. Because in the 17th century, you're never truly alone. Something is always breathing beside you, loyal, indifferent, or hungry. And as you scratch your scalp and pull your feet away from Matilda the boot hen, you find yourself oddly comforted by the noise, the squeaks, the clucks, the soft snoring of Muck the dog. It's messy, it's unhygienic, it's a walking public health violation, but it's home, and every snarl, hiss, and scurry is a lullaby of teeth. It begins with a drip. You feel it first on your temple, then again, a steady beat against your brow, like your house is crying, which honestly it probably is. The roof is leaking. Again. Batched and patched a dozen times with straw, mud, and one ambitious squirrel carcass. But the heavens are relentless. It's raining. It's raining. Of course it is. It's always raining in this part of the 17th century world. The kind of gray drizzle that turns into sleet, then hail, then a poetic mist, only to sneak back as sideways wind-borne liquid misery. The clouds above do not merely drift. They hover, as if judging you. Your bed is damp. The walls are damp. The pig is damp. You are also damp. This is the constant truth of your life. Wet clothes, wet socks, wet bread. You have forgotten what dry feels like. The only dry thing you own is a handful of herbs hanging from the ceiling, and even they weep with dew. You rise and push open the door. The mud outside is not mud, exactly. It is prehistoric goo that attempts to claim your boots like an overenthusiastic lover. It slurps, sucks, and holds. You curse it gently and move on. Rain in the 17th century does not politely patter. It invades. You will spend much of your morning rearranging buckets, pots, bowls, anything to catch the steady leak from your ceiling. You've memorized each drip's musical tone. One sounds like melancholy. One sounds like the tax collector's laugh. Sometimes, when the wind screams and the rain comes down in sideways sheets, you think of your ancestors. They too were wet, eternally wet, possibly moldier than you. You draw strength from this shared mildew heritage. But the worst isn't rain, it's cold. Now, cold in modern terms is brr, time for fuzzy socks and cocoa. Cold in the 17th century is, the river froze, again, a man died, no one noticed, your urine solidified before hitting the chamber pot. Your fingers? Useless. You try to grip your axe, but it's like shaking hands with a ghost. Numbness turns to pain, and pain turns to a sort of spiritual detachment. You imagine you are simply a log, resting near other logs, occasionally sighing frost. Fires help, a little. If you have wood, which you rarely do, and if it's not soggy, which it always is, you can coax a few flames. But the smoke never vents properly. It curls into the room like a lazy demon, burning your eyes, clinging to your clothes, and triggering the kind of cough that becomes a local legend. And don't get too close to the fire. Last week, someone's cousin fell asleep too near and roasted his own leg. They called him Charred Thomas after that. You try not to think about it when warming your toes. Let's talk about heat. Not warmth. Heat. Summer in this century isn't fun, beachy sandals weather. It's a festival of sweat, stink, and suspicion. Everything spoils faster. Milk curdles before your eyes. Bread turns green. People grow irritable, then violent, then religious. There is no sunscreen. There are no cold drinks. Water is suspicious at best, often full of worms and generally avoided. So you sweat and dehydrate and hallucinate a saint telling you to drink brine. You do. You regret it. Flies emerge like they've been summoned from hell. Clouds of them. They breed in your outhouse, your compost pile, your dog's ear. You bat them away with a bit of twine tied to a stick, the era's premier insect deterrent. It does not work. Nothing works. Then come the storms. Thunder isn't majestic. It's a threat. It rattles your bones. Lightning cracks trees, splits barns, sets pigs running into rivers. You once watched a bolt hit a church. People screamed. The priest blamed sin. You nodded solemnly and hid your playing cards. Wind? Wind is personal. Wind in this century doesn't just pass through. It targets. It peels your roof back like a sardine can. It steals your hats. It slaps you with your own washing line. One morning you woke up and your outhouse had simply left, carried off into the trees like a wooden ghost ship. You said nothing. You respected its journey. But perhaps the most dangerous form of weather is fog. Thick, gray, smothering. It slips between door cracks, hides ditches, swallows entire fields. It confuses livestock and makes children cry. Once, you walked 5 feet and emerged somewhere else entirely. A different village, a different language, possibly a different year. You never talk about it. Weather in the 17th century is more than a backdrop. It is an antagonist. It shapes your health, your work, your death. Crops fail, blame the weather. Sickness spreads, weather. Someone fell into a bog and dissolved, technically their fault, but yes, also weather. And yet, there are rare days, quiet ones, where the wind calms and the sun peeks through like a bashful guest. You feel its warmth and squint, suspicious. You don't trust it, because the 17th century sun is a liar. It warms you just enough to coax off your cloak, then disappears and leaves you shivering in your shift. You mutter a curse and shake your fist at the sky, which promptly sneezes a drizzle onto your brow. Still, you trudge through it. You adapt, because you must. Because the sky may not be your friend, but you've got a bucket on your head, a stick in your hand, and boots full of ambition. And damp, always damp. The day has bled out quietly. There was no fanfare, no majestic sunset symphony, just the slow dimming of light, like someone upstairs was gently turning a candle snuffer over the sky. You notice it first in the color of the mud, how it stops pretending to be brown and turns instead to a dull, aching gray. The kind of gray that makes your eyes feel like they've aged an extra decade. The kind of gray that tastes like wet iron if you breathe in too hard. You squint into the fading light, rubbing your temples, which are beginning to throb with that familiar tension, the one that usually means a storm, a fever, or that someone nearby is about to die. Tonight, it's probably all three. The village is quieter now. Not serene, nothing is ever serene, but quieter. The pigs have stopped screaming. The neighbor's child has paused his endless coughing fit. The chickens have begrudgingly flopped into their wooden coop, which smells like a gym sock full of nightmares. Your joints ache, your feet itch, your teeth, what few you have, throb with that slow drumbeat ache that whispers, soon. You remember when teeth weren't a daily source of existential dread. That time is long past. Now each molar is a relic of pain just waiting to shatter mid-chew on a piece of undercooked carrot. Dinner, if we can call it that, sits in your belly like a leaden betrayal. Some sort of boiled root and something that once may have been meat, or mold, or both. You swallowed it anyway, because not eating is somehow worse. Food doesn't heal, it haunts. And now the darkness comes. The inside of your home, and we are using the term loosely here, is lit by a single candle stub, stuck into a cracked dish filled with animal fat. The flame flickers weakly, casting shadows that dance like drunk ghosts across the wall. It smells like regret and tallow, which is, in many ways, the same thing. You try not to look too long at the shadow of the thing in the corner. It might be a chair, it might be a person, it might be something else entirely. You've learned not to ask. Darkness here is not just absence of light, it's an ecosystem. And you are not at the top of the food chain. As you settle in for the night, the sounds of evening take over. A cough, two coughs, a distant wail. A donkey making noises that suggest it is either giving birth or attempting a sea shanty. Then, silence, but not a comforting one. The kind of silence that lets you hear your own body working too hard to survive. You lie down on your bundle of straw, which pokes and jabs and smells faintly of mildew, feet, and desperation. There's something crawling in it. Probably a beetle, or a cousin of the beetle that visited last night. You name him Walter. He will probably outlive you. Let's talk about death, not the fun, dramatic kind you see in stories. No sword fights, no noble sacrifices, no final words whispered to a beloved. No, in the 17th century, death is bureaucratic, mundane, moist. People die from tooth infections, from stubbed toes, from sneezing too hard in winter, from thinking about plums too intensely, and they die constantly. You've seen 5 corpses this week, and it's only Thursday. One was a child who choked on a pebble. Another was your neighbor's aunt, who thought she had a little stomach fire and then exploded from within like a compost heap under pressure. The village has a bell for this. Not a celebratory bell, a death bell. 1 toll for each soul lost. It tolls so often it may as well have a rhythm section. You've grown numb to it. Almost. But there are moments, like now, with the chill creeping through the cracks in the wall and the beetle in your hair politely adjusting his nest, when the fear comes back. Sharp, cold, whispering things like your cough is deeper today, or was that your molar or just a hallucination of pain? If you get sick, there are options, none of them good. You could pray, hope the local friar stops by and doesn't accuse you of harboring sin rot. You could bleed yourself. Let a man with wine-stained breath and rusty tools open a vein and whisper cheerful encouragement as you turn gray. You could apply poultices, made of mold, moss, crushed beetles, or mysterious powders from a man who insists he studied somewhere foreign. Or you could do what most people do, lie still, hum a psalm, and hope your soul gets sorted before the worms do. Burials are communal, but not in a warm, supportive way. More like tossed into a ditch with 3 others, covered in a perfunctory layer of dirt and blessed quickly before the priest moves on to his next corpse. There is no embalming, no eulogies, just decomposition, and maybe a few rats who wander by for a nibble. And yet somehow, people laugh. Jokes are told, Al is passed. Psalms are sung in scratchy off-key harmonies about brave warriors, old gods, and the occasional humorous pig. You find comfort in this, not in the psalms, they're terrible, but in the endurance. The sheer absurdity of continuing, of eating, of dressing, of existing in a world that wants you dead and smells like it already succeeded. The candle sputters, the flame dances one last time, then out, darkness. You close your eyes, not because you feel safe, but because keeping them open is pointless. You listen to the wind moan, the floor creak, the beetles snore. Tomorrow will be the same. Another day of rot, labor, suspicious mutton, and the haunting knowledge that at any moment, your spleen might decide to rebel. But for now, you rest. And as you drift off into dreams of dry clothes and working sewers, know this, you survived another day. Somehow. And if you're still awake, I admire your dedication to suffering. Good night, night wanderer. It could always be worse. You could be in this timeline,